Meanwhile, Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen is making an apparent attempt to tamp down on this controversy with a series of visits to border cities. Now, she was in El Paso, Texas yesterday and will travel to Yuma, Arizona today. And joining me now, Raul Reyes, an NBC contributor and an attorney. Raul, Secretary Nielsen has accused asylum seekers of trying to essentially game the system. So is there a sense of whether she and President Trump are actually opening the administration for even more legal challenges?
Absolutely. The problem with this administration when it comes to the border situation is twofold. Number one is that the president and his administration has continually presented the situation on our southern border as one that has to do with illegal immigration. That's not the problem. The problem is that we have so many asylum seekers from Central America arriving at the southern border to claim their legal right to humanitarian relief. And our government is not prepared to process them, hold them, and to determine ultimately whether or not they will receive asylum. The second problem goes to credibility. We have this president in large part because he campaigned about what he sees as the scourge of illegal immigration, and he's repeatedly referenced undocumented people as being dangerous criminals, as the caravan as a threat. And when we see Secretary Nielsen down at the border now doing, in my view, some damage control, I think of when she was testifying before Congress recently. She did not know, when asked, she did not know how many people had died.
She couldn't say.
She couldn't say how many people had died under her tenure as DHS chief. She didn't know. She didn't even know the number of ports of entry along our southern border. And she took a guess at 20. It's actually 48. That's something every Border Patrol agent knows. And to remind people, this is the same Department of Homeland Security Secretary who back in the summer told the country that the Trump administration did not have a policy of separating families and children, which we all know now was false. So those are two big hurdles, the immigration, that this administration has, where they're trying to wrap themselves around this new crisis, largely of their own creation.
Well, we've talked about the Secretary of Homeland Security, but let's turn now to the White House Press Secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I want to show you something she said in an interview just yesterday.
Look, it's absolutely a terrible tragedy, something no one wants to see, which is also why we're encouraging people not to make this treacherous journey. It is dangerous. This is one of the most important reasons that we have to protect our border so that we're not incentivizing people to make this dangerous journey.
All right, so she talks about the dangers of the journey and incentivizing people to take it. But the truth is, it's easy for the White House to tell migrants not to come with their children. But who is essentially accountable when we talk about these children dying once they get here?
Well, once they get here and they are in government custody, I mean, obviously it is DHS and Border Patrol. And with all due respect to Sarah Huckabee Sanders, when people like her or Kirstjen Nielsen make these public announcements urging migrants not to make this trek northward and to stay home, with all respect to them, no one in Central America even knows who they are. No one is listening to them. To be honest, they are not watching CNN or MSNBC. What these people are doing, who are these asylum seekers, they are leaving their countries because they have no other options. The civil society is not holding together. It's very violent. They are fleeing for their lives. This is not a journey they take lightly. And trust me on this one, no one knows more about the dangers of these journeys than the people who go through it and attempt it. They know full well what they are getting into, but they have no option. At home, there's so much gang violence. There's so much physical intimidation and sexual abuse of women that they are forced to flee. And we do see in the Trump administration and even in the Obama administration, to be fair, that efforts based on an immigration policy based on a deterrence strategy, it does not work. And in fact, this summer...
And Raul, I want to stop you there because I want to go back to something you said earlier. And the question is also which came first, the chicken or the egg? Because in addition to closing the southern border yesterday, President Trump also threatened to pull U.S. funding from Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador. What impact would that have? I mean, effectively closing it, wouldn't that encourage more people to come because they're facing the very thing we're talking about?
Right. Well, both of those actions would have the unintended consequences of increasing illegal, unauthorized arrivals at our southern border. If he closes off the whole border, first of all, that would be an economic catastrophe. And if the president cuts back on aid to Central America, there will likely be more violence and unrest in those countries, which will probably lead to more migrant caravans and more people fleeing, and as a result, more people at our southern border. So the president and this entire administration, if they have any serious desire to solve this problem, must start looking at it in a realistic way, and starting with one, that is a humanitarian crisis, and two, that the United States must help address the problems in Central America, which is the root of the influx of migrants that we have.
Raul Reyes, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, Morgan.
It's been nice speaking.